Thanks everyone for your patience. We really appreciate it. So to get us started, as we usually do, we'd like to start out with a couple of early polls. And first, we'd just like to find out what your current role is so we have an idea of who's joining us this time. We're going to go ahead and launch that poll and take just a moment to select whichever best describes your role, or if you feel you need to choose the other option, you can let us know more about your role in the questions box.
All right, so this is Sarah. We've got responses coming in. Let's take just another moment or two to capture who's with us today. And again, if you don't quite fit in any of those categories, do feel free to chat in other responses. All right, thank you everyone. I think we'll go ahead and close the poll. And what we were seeing is that a majority of you fall into that role of child care resource and referral specialists, about 60%. We've also got folks here who are in the role of director or supervisor, and some folks who work for a state network. So thanks for joining. And then some of the other folks who chatted in roles included Cheryl, let's see, a special needs coordinator. Thank you, Cheryl. Sunny, coordinator of family engagement. We've got Kayla as a lead trainer. Brandy as an R&R specialist. Also legally exempt enrollment specialist and family or FCC coordinator, so family child care coordinator. So thank you all for chatting your responses in for us.
Thanks, Sarah, for reading those out for us. We actually have a second poll now for you. And we'd like to know if there are any returning guests from our first and second webinars in this series. So this time we'll launch the poll. You can take a moment to select whether you're able to participate with us for any of the previous installments or whether this is your first time sitting in with us.
And as we're getting ready to close that poll, I did want to share that Brandy is joining us for the first time. So she chatted that into the question box. So thanks, Brandy. We appreciate that. It does look like lots of folks have joined us for both the first webinar and the second webinar. And then for some folks, this is their first time joining us as well. So thank you. And again, at the end of the presentation, there'll be some information on how you can access additional resources, and our follow-up email will include a link to where you can access the previous webinars as well. So do watch for that follow-up email to come to you soon.
Okay, thanks everyone for responding to that poll for us. We've got a good mix of folks who have been here before and of first-timers, and we want to thank you all again for joining us and extend a welcome to everyone. So our objectives for today's webinar include getting an understanding of the potential childcare needs that families of children with special needs may have, and to learn how to adapt and customize the consumer education and resources we share to better serve families with a diversity of needs. During our last webinar, if you were able to join us, we talked about how to engage with families using conversation, and included in that was ways to adapt your consumer education to meet each family's individual needs. So if you're here for that session, or if you've been able to listen to the recording, you know that we feel strongly about tailoring our approach to meet each family where they're at. However, what we'd like to do during this webinar is to discuss why it's even more essential that families of children with special needs receive a very customized approach that includes not only adapted consumer education, but also additional resources that we can share with them. So why do we need to take extra care when working to assist a family of a child with special needs? Number one, and most obviously, the child's needs are often different than many of the other children that families call us about. Special needs often require a more narrow list of referrals and a more rigid selection process because the family has additional deciding factors, such as, can this provider safely care for my child's medical condition or developmental delay, or whatever may be the case. Number two, families of children with special needs may be more likely to come to us with other types of child care needs, such as respite care or programs that specialize in a certain disability or condition. And number three, families of children with special needs may also be more likely to come to us at different stages in their child care search, with a higher level of stress or frustration due to the difficulty of their task and the sensitive nature of their need. With that said, we're going to take a moment to look at each of these three reasons to adapt and customize the information and resources we share when having these conversations. First, we'll talk about what we mean by special needs. As you probably assume, we're including a whole range of special needs in this discussion. Although actual needs can vary greatly, even within the same diagnosis, families seeking child care for a child with special needs will have many of the same concerns when looking for the best fit. You may speak with families of children with physical special needs, emotional and behavioral, sensory impaired, or developmental special needs. We provided some examples down here at the bottom, but of course there are so many more needs and diagnoses that you may hear of or encounter. Unless you're a medical professional, it's difficult to have an in-depth understanding of all the different terms and names that you may hear. And most families would not expect their local referral specialist to fully understand every child's special needs. However, we do encourage you to learn a bit about some of the more common disabilities or diagnoses that you may hear of, like autism or epilepsy, and to think about how to sensitively ask parents to share more about their child's needs if they mention something you're not familiar with. We also know that families of children with special needs may come to us with different child care scheduling or setting needs. A family may have typical scheduling needs, such as wanting full-time or part-time care due to a parent's work or school schedule. They could need regularly scheduled care during business hours or even for a non-traditional schedule. Another potential request from any family would be for a part-day program, such as a preschool, that would serve to boost their child's school readiness or provide them with more opportunities for school, for social and emotional development among other children. But you may also have more parents of children with special needs who come to you needing occasional child care so that they can have a break from their caregiving responsibilities, or so that they can run errands or go to medical appointments. We understand that many families might look for occasional child care, but families of children with special needs may specifically benefit from this type of child care option. Families may also come to you knowing that they would like a specific type of child care setting. They may feel strongly that their child should be in an inclusive child care program where children of all abilities play and learn together with varying levels of support. Inclusive child care is beneficial to all children as they build relationships with each other and are encouraged to support one another and celebrate their differences. Other families may be looking for a program where their child is either the only child in care or where they can have one-to-one care throughout the day. and some families may hope to find a more specialized environment that caters to children with similar needs. So not only are there the actual special needs to consider, but there are also childcare needs that take both the family's schedule and desires into account, as well as what kind of setting they believe their child would most benefit from. Families of children with special needs often come to us with unique circumstances within their childcare search. Now, some of these circumstances could apply to any family, but in our experience, those families that have a child with special needs are more likely to come to us with a higher level of stress and frustration due to some of the factors we'll mention here. You may speak with a family that has very typical circumstances. It could be their very first time searching for childcare, or they could be changing providers because they moved or because their child has aged out of a previous program. However, we work with so many families who have already been through one or more rounds of a childcare search, and they're going through it again because of a previous negative experience. Maybe their child wasn't cared for properly and they had to suddenly pull them out of a program or situation they've been using, or perhaps their child was asked to leave due to a behavioral need that the program was unable to support. Additionally, they may have found an environment that appears favorable and later realize that it was not compatible with the child's needs. We've also had families of children with special needs call at the end of their rope after they've already exhausted the other options they've looked into, and they either can't find a program that will accept their child, or they haven't found a program or provider that they feel is the right place given the needs that their child has. So again, any parent of any child could find themselves in one of these more difficult situations, but we've seen the families of children with special needs are more likely to be in one of these boats because it can be hard to come by providers with the proper level of training, experience, and support that their child may need. Even though the actual needs and circumstances may be a bit different for families of children with special needs, we still want to ensure equity by offering the full spectrum of information to all families whenever possible. This means that we should try to share all of the consumer education topics we've gone over in previous webinars, including licensing information, where to find inspection reports, and how to evaluate child care providers when doing an in-person visit. And in all of our interactions, we should continue to show empathy, sensitivity, and responsiveness to the family's needs and desires. For those families with a child with special needs that come to us with a high level of stress and in difficult circumstances, like those that we discussed on the previous slide, these qualities should be even more pronounced in our conversations. We talked last time about building trust through partnerships, and families with diverse needs especially can benefit from having a trusted partner who they feel is sensitive and responsive to their family's situation and needs, and who understands the challenges they're facing. We're going to take a quick break to ask for your participation in another poll. This time about how your agency handles referrals for children with special needs. We know that different agencies track different pieces of provider information, and some agencies provide additional services and resources. So we'll launch the poll, and we're asking you to choose the best option to describe what your agency is able to offer to families of children with special needs at this time. And I'll read the options aloud for you, but if you do need to select the other option, please do so, and then you can feel free to provide any additional information about what your agency offers in the questions box, and Sarah will read those aloud for us. So the options that we're going to have are for those agencies that can customize referrals by typical needs but not special needs, or agencies who are able to provide referrals to providers that serve children with certain special needs, or for those agencies that provide enhanced referrals with vacancy checks to providers that serve children with special needs, and then of course you'll have that other box as well. So go ahead and select whichever one. We'll give you just a moment to answer, and then we'll read those aloud.
It looks like we have a few folks who are still in the process of voting. And as we wrap that up, there are a couple of responses that have come in as well. So I'm happy to read those. But let's give it just another second for our voting. Okay. So as you can see from the responses, we do have some folks who selected the customized referrals, about 15%, but for most of you, you're referring to providers that serve children with special needs. And Jamie Lee did type in that they refer to providers that have experience with children with special needs, so not necessarily that serve, but providers that have experience with that. We also had some folks who provide enhanced referrals. That was about 24%. And then some of the other responses, Misty indicated that they provide a warm handoff to a partner agency. Anna wrote in that customized referrals are provided, but a referral to the inclusion department for Georgia's Department of Early Care and Learning is included with parents' permission. So thank you, Anna, for your response. We also had Shanda saying that they asked providers questions about no training or experience in special needs, or if they have experience with inclusion, if they have specific inclusive practices, and or a strong commitment to serving children with special needs. So those are some of the questions that they ask of their providers. Two other responses, Deborah responded that they refer to providers that serve children with special needs, and they're connecting them with partners that are serving families and children with special needs. And that way they're getting some further support. So an example might be the Center for Inclusive Childcare. So thank you, Deborah, for that. And then Sunny indicated that their CCR&Rs refer to other providers as well that specialize in special needs, or refer the family to inclusion specialists in their community. So those are some of the other responses that were added as well.
Thanks, Sarah, and thanks everyone for your participation. We know that agency services and what you're able to track and provide will vary widely in terms of providing referrals for families with children with special needs, as you've just shared with us. And whether your agency is able to provide basic referrals or enhanced referrals, you can always customize your consumer education to help families better understand what to look for and how to evaluate quality childcare that can meet their child and family's needs. We'll start by talking about how you might need to change up the conversation around types of childcare when speaking with a family of a child with special needs. We discussed the different childcare needs that families may have in terms of schedule and settings, and of course their needs could be very typical. In that case, you may keep this information fairly traditional by learning about their scheduling needs, and then sharing information about family childcare homes, childcare centers, preschools, or school-age childcare programs, and how those types of programs may best fit what the family needs for full-time or part-time care. There will also be families that come to you seeking childcare in their own home. We know that there are many families who prefer a caregiver to come into their home, but families with children with special needs may be more likely to seek out this type of care because their child would benefit from a familiar, calm, low-transition environment, or because they have medical equipment or needs that require in-home care. Our specialists typically focus on consumer education around regulated childcare options. However, in some cases, we do understand that a family's needs can only be met by an in-home childcare. In that case, we'd still offer similar consumer education around caregiver training, background checks, etc., for those looking for only in-home care. You will need to think about what you're able to offer them in terms of both consumer education and referrals, if your agency has resources that you can consult for this type of care. If you don't provide referrals, do you have any online referral sources that you can refer to? Do you have a checklist of questions to ask a potential in-home caregiver over the phone and in person? Or resources on how to do a variety of background checks on an individual caregiver in your state? Do you know where they can find information on average cost of care for an in-home provider? Families of children with special needs could greatly benefit from a level of support around this type of care if your agency is able to offer it. In addition to out-of-home and in-home regularly scheduled care, it can also be helpful to have knowledge and resources around respite care and Head Start and early Head Start to share with families of children with special needs. We're going to talk about each of these over the next few slides.
When a parent is the primary caregiver for a child with special needs, they can benefit from respite care as a way to get a mental, emotional, and physical break from their caregiving responsibilities. Parents often need this time to recharge and power down for a bit, or they may use it to run errands, go to appointments, or to spend time with their partner or other children as a way of maintaining important family connections when their attention is often directed toward the child with special needs. Respite care can also have a positive impact on the child because they receive one-on-one time with a caregiver who's knowledgeable and experienced in meeting their developmental needs. Respite care is usually provided in the child's home or in the caregiver's home, depending on what the family and provider work out for the good of the child, and is typically offered on an hourly, occasional basis. In some areas, there may be child care centers that serve children with special needs on an hourly basis, but respite care is often in-home. Considerations for this type of care are similar to what parents would think about when choosing a full-time in-home provider. So background checks, ensuring a safe environment for their child, and finding someone they feel safe leaving their child with. In order for respite care to be truly helpful for the parents, they need to have full confidence that their caregiver is well-trained and equipped to care for their child. This can be difficult to find because it often requires specific medical knowledge or training on how to provide adequate care for a child's specific needs. If your agency doesn't already have a way of tracking respite care providers for referrals, it may be helpful to look into some other resources that you can refer families to. Many states do have their own online respite databases, and the ARCH National Respite Network has links to the list of states that do, as well as online search for respite care organizations in each state. If you haven't yet used that resource, we'll list it a bit later on, and we encourage you to browse their database for your state. You may also want to contact your local Easter Seals and the ARC organizations to find out if they may have respite provider networks for parents as well. Also consider financial assistance resources for respite care. Since state child care subsidies don't usually pay for occasional hours of child care, some states have Medicaid waivers that cover respite care or other funded services. And you can also do a search for funding sources by state through the ARCH National Respite Network.
As we're sure you know, Head Start and Early Head Start programs promote school readiness of children from birth to age 5 from low-income families. These programs offer a variety of service models, from in-home visiting to center or home-based childcare, and they're designed to support the development of the whole child. These programs often include early learning services, health services, and services that benefit the well-being of the child's family. While Head Start and Early Head Start eligibility have income requirements that must be met, there are also other priorities given that we should be aware of. The Head Start program performance standards require that programs reserve 10% of their total funded enrollment for children eligible for services under IDEA. So children with special needs that qualify for IDEA services like early intervention or special education between the ages of 0 and 5 may have a better chance of securing a slot in programs that may fill up quickly. Not all children with special needs will meet the requirements of being eligible for services under IDEA, but if you know that a child has been evaluated and is eligible, or if you think that parents would benefit from looking into Head Start, you can use the Head Start locator to find local grantees to provide them with Head Start referrals. If you don't already use it, the Head Start locator link will be displayed close to the end of the webinar. In addition to changing up the conversation around types of child care, you can also customize the quality indicators information that you offer to families of a child with special needs. We've actually been working on a new brochure with some of these indicators listed out in checklist format, and we do hope to be able to share that with you in the coming months. However, for now, we'll go over some of the typical quality indicators that you can adapt when speaking with a family of a child with special needs, and others that you can add that may touch on specific concerns or issues that families may need to address. The three main quality indicators on this slide are some that you'd hopefully already be talking about with parents as you're discussing consumer ed, but for children with special needs, these can be adapted. So for ratio and group size, many children with special needs would benefit from a ratio that's lower than that required by state licensing, and in many cases, they may even require or benefit greatly from one-to-one support. Children with certain needs might also do best with a smaller group size, especially those children who may need more attention or who are easily overwhelmed by noise or activity levels. Training and education should be similar in some ways to a typical consumer ed conversation. So you always want to encourage families to find providers who are up to date on health and safety training, who have a degree or credential in early childhood or child development, who are actively involved in professional development, and who are CPR and first aid certified. But for a child with special needs, there may be specific levels of training and education that providers would need in order to adequately care for and support them. Parents should then be looking for providers who have been trained to care for the types of needs their child has, from their actual day-to-day developmental and physical needs, as well as dealing with food allergies or medication administration if necessary. And of course, all parents should see evidence of consistently positive interactions in the program they choose, but for children with special needs, it's especially important to feel like the program celebrates and values differences among all children. This means that the adults are nurturing and compassionate to all children, they're friendly and open with the parents, and that they encourage children to support and assist one another with positive attitudes about their differences. The family should also see responsive care being provided to the needs of all children, and once again, that the caregivers see and talk about differences in positive ways. And lastly, the family should see that the teachers are involved in the children's learning and using different techniques, teaching methods, and communication styles to enhance the children's experiences. Many families will also benefit from additional quality indicators that you may not need to mention to all parents. So you could talk about the accessibility of the facility and the activities provided. So some questions like, are all areas of the program physically accessible to you and your child? Thinking about entrances, bathrooms, playground, etc. Are the toys and books accessible on low shelves so that all children can reach desired items? And are activities designed with the needs of all children in mind? And in terms of communication, how will the program monitor their child's health and development? How will they communicate issues, challenges, or solutions to the parents? And how can the parents ask for changes if their child needs something different in terms of daily care or schedule? And for those families whose child receives early intervention or special education services, has the provider worked with children that received these types of services before? Where can the services be provided on site? And how do program staff participate in working towards the goals set for the child? And of course, even aside from the accessibility of the center or home itself, the environment should be a place where children with special needs can thrive. Depending on the child's needs, there may be additional quality indicators to mention here. If the child has a developmental delay or a sensory disorder, families can be looking to see if the program has taken measures to effectively reduce crowding in play areas or to allow for small group or one-on-one play. So this could include something like program signage in each center that limits the number of children at one time. And that's just a small measure taken that shows the program or provider's commitment to creating a safe and comfortable place for all children. Families should be on the lookout for these types of measures and also whether or not they're being used effectively. Parents may also want to look for evidence that an environment has been arranged to reduce sensory overstimulation. So has the provider eliminated as many potential sensory triggers as possible, such as strong smells, bright lighting, loud noise levels, too large group sizes, or others? And the environment should be organized to meet the developmental needs of all children, with parents once again looking for ways that a program or provider could accommodate their child's needs and learning styles. So if a child has autism, they could do very well in an environment where they're able to choose from a variety of hands-on sensory activities that are available to them throughout the day. And in this case, we could encourage parents to look for sand and water tables, easels for painting, an option to spend time in a soft, quiet area, well-equipped science areas where they can examine natural objects, to give just a few examples. Measures taken to create a comfortable environment for a child will speak volumes about the program's commitment to the development and learning of all children. And families can really benefit from this kind of detail about what to look for, especially if they've had experiences with other programs that didn't end up meeting their child's needs. Before we move on, we have a chat opportunity for everyone. So can you think of any other quality indicators that you might want to mention to a parent of a child with special needs? What else might they want to look for or ask about that might help them evaluate whether it would be a good fit for their child? So as you're thinking, this could be something specific to a certain type of need or disability, or it could just be a very general indicator. Go ahead and take a moment to think, and you can chat in the questions box anything you'd like to share with us. And then Sarah will once again help us out by reading some out loud.
All right, so thank you, Michelle. Michelle has asked or added that an important question might be whether or not staff have had training in inclusion. Another response is finding out whether or not they have served children with special needs or that child-specific need before as an additional quality indicator.
Thank you, Sarah, for reading those for us, and thank you for sharing your thoughts. We want to talk now about the wide range of information and resources that we can provide to families of children with special needs to inform their child care search and to continue to assist them along their path. We've already discussed the fact that we can try to provide customized referrals depending on what your agency's tracking capabilities are, and we can tailor our consumer ed to better equip them for their search. We could also provide coaching on how to share about their child when speaking with the provider and information about how to advocate for their child based on their rights through the Americans with Disabilities Act, financial assistance resources for regularly scheduled child care or respite care, and some of the additional resources we mentioned and others you may think of. We'll skip over these first two pieces because we've already covered them, and we'll start with how we can coach parents on how to share about their child. We do have one question for you before we talk about this topic. It was a question that we had to discuss among ourselves in creating the content for a new brochure about assisting families of children with special needs on their child care search. And the question is, do you think a parent should be encouraged to be specific about their child's needs when interviewing prospective providers? Why or why not? We hope you'll think specifically about parents who may feel that sharing about their child's needs would potentially keep them from finding a child care spot. We know it's not a black and white issue, but we'd love to hear your initial thoughts and acknowledge that there are definitely varying viewpoints on this topic. So take a quick moment and share if you'd like, and Sarah will read just one or two out loud for us.
All right, we're getting some yeses. That parents should be encouraged to be specific. One of the reasons Michelle shared, I think it's important to share the families should be open and honest with their provider, and the CCR&R can try to alleviate their fears around sharing information about their child's special needs. Maria, Sherelle, all agreeing and that it's important to be able to share so that providers can meet their child's needs. We have lots of other folks chiming in on things like keeping the lines of communication open, being able to share honestly and have transparency, And so we appreciate everybody's responses. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sarah, and all who have shared. There's definitely a range of thoughts on this topic, and as you consider how your agency can better support families, it may be helpful to hear from a parent who struggled with this particular decision. We don't have time right now, but we do have a really great video from our Parent Voices series that is a family explaining the difficulties of finding childcare for special needs and how she decided what to disclose and when to disclose it to the provider. We're going to put it in Basecamp for everybody to listen to since we're a little short on time today. We've seen that this is a complicated topic because some families do feel that sharing certain information about their child will prevent them from finding childcare, especially if they're in a time crunch for care. We recognize that everyone's situation is different and certain unique circumstances may present themselves at times. But overall, we do believe that it's important for families to communicate openly about their child's special needs during the search process, balancing both the child's strengths and challenges that they may face. Because withholding important information about a child could potentially put them in an unsafe situation with a provider who's not well equipped to care for them, we encourage families to be open about any special needs their child has, including any physical supports or other supports they may need. We can encourage parents to share about their child's strengths, as well as the ways they've learned to provide additional supports for their needs. Parents should also keep in mind that a quality child care provider will respond positively to differences in children's abilities, interests, and experiences. The most important thing is that the child is with someone that can keep them safe and healthy. And when families are able to be honest and open about what their child truly needs, it will help them to ensure that this is the case. Depending on a child's needs, parents may want to offer to have a trained individual, whether it be themselves, another family member, or other professional, to work with the provider for a short time. This person could be present to model and provide assistance in caring for and meeting the child's needs and helping the child make a successful transition to the child care program. If this is something that the family is able to offer, they should do that during the interview or enrollment process so the provider knows that this support will be available to them. If you're able to watch the video clip that we mentioned, you'll hear an example of how the parent offered this type of service to the program they chose.
Unfortunately, parents may fear or have found to be true that sharing about their child's needs puts them at a disadvantage for finding a child care slot. They may have already experienced providers who turn them away for a slot because their child requires certain accommodations that they feel they're unable to make, or they may have been in situations where their child has been expelled or asked to leave and they're unsure if it was a fair decision. For this reason, we also want families to have information and resources available to them about their rights and how to advocate for themselves and their child. Parents of children with disabilities and special needs often have to be their own advocates. We can encourage them to know their rights and their child's rights, both during the child care search process as well as once the child is enrolled. We can provide them with resources that may be able to help them if they have questions or need direction, or in the case of early intervention or the local education agencies, they may even be able to provide additional support, such as an aid or on-site therapy if the child's eligible. And here you'll see a couple other examples of those types of resources that we could share with them. And of course, if they do feel that a program has denied or asked the child to leave unfairly, parents should be encouraged to gather as much information as they're able and to arrange a time to have a conversation with the child care provider.
Coaching a family on how to share about their child in a strengths-based way and advocating for their child does not mean that you must be an expert on the Americans with Disabilities Act or how to advocate for a child with special needs. Just providing resources to the family on these topics will be one of the most helpful things you can do. But it can be beneficial to know the basics of ADA to inform your conversations. The Americans with Disabilities Act, or ADA, prohibits discrimination against individuals with disabilities in all areas of public life. ADA guarantees equal opportunity to individuals with disabilities, for state or local government services under Title II, and for public accommodations under Title III. Most child care programs fall under Title II or III. And as we've mentioned, we strongly encourage parents to be aware of their rights and those of their child when searching for and using child care. This screenshot was taken from the ADA website on their commonly asked questions about child care centers and the Americans with Disabilities Act webpage. You can see that there are practical questions asked on this page, mostly from the point of view of the providers, but it's a helpful resource both for your own knowledge as well as for parents to learn more about their rights under the ADA. Parents can use this information and the information line listed toward the bottom of the page to help them determine if their child's rights are being violated and to support any advocacy efforts for their child. We thought it might be helpful to look through some of the basic requirements for Title III, which covers mostly privately run child care programs like centers and homes. We're not going to read the bullets here, but these will be posted on Basecamp and sent to you via email, so you'll have time to read them on your own.
Families with children with special needs also often seek information on financial assistance for child care, both for regularly occurring care, like full-time or part-time care, and for respite care. Each state and local area will have different resources that you can share with families who come to you with these questions, so you can think ahead and be prepared with the resources that are available to you. So think about what kind of child care assistance is offered in your state, and is there any sort of priority for children with special needs? Are there local organizations that offer respite care services or assistance? Do you know of any scholarships or local organizations that offer assistance for children with special needs? Does your state have a Medicaid waiver that funds respite care for children with special needs? Does the family already have information about important financial supports like Medicaid or CHIP, TANF, or children with special health care needs? And are there any other financial services that you can think of? And these are just some of the resources that it may be helpful to look into in your area or to have on hand for consumer ed conversations or follow-up emails. Depending on the organization and even the chapter or site, each of these may offer different types of services, so it will be important to get to know the site that serves your area and what they offer. For example, some Easter Seals offer child development centers or respite care services, and some chapters of the ARC may offer respite care or help with advocacy. You may be able to find respite care organizations and funding through the ARCH National Respite Network, as we mentioned earlier, or a local UCP affiliate that offers caregiver and respite care services. We'd recommend looking into each one of these to see whether there is a local or state chapter in your area that you could contact to inquire about services, and then determine if it would be a helpful resource for families with children with special needs that might contact your agency. We also mentioned the Head Start locator earlier, and that link's provided for you here. You can search for Head Start or Early Head Starts by zip code or other criteria to see where your local grantees are, and consider reaching out to them with any questions about referring families to their services. And the final resource listed here is for anyone who'd like to learn more about Medicaid waivers that we mentioned earlier, although you can also see if your state has a Medicaid waiver that might offer respite care by going through the ARCH National Respite Network and do a search for funding in your state.
Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and move on to questions. We're just about out of time. But if you wanted to go ahead and take a couple of moments to put your questions in the chat, what we'll do is we will make sure all the questions are posted in Basecamp following the conversation today. And if the questions are directly related to anything on the material that we presented, we'd be happy to provide answers, as well as give a chance for anyone else in the community to provide answers to the questions. So please really put the questions in chat, and we'll make sure that we follow up on Basecamp. So as you're typing in questions, just a quick reminder of Basecamp, especially if this is the first time joining us. Following this webinar, you're going to receive an email. It's going to have a link to the Basecamp where we continue our discussion offline and post files and resources. When you log in, you're going to see a screen similar to what you see right now. There's a few different resources, but we're going to focus on the message board as well as the docs and files. On the message board, you'll see all of our current discussions, even the ones from the first webinar. And we'll continue some additional discussion threads. You're welcome to start your own thread if you'd like as well. And there's also the docs and files where we post copies of the slides from all 3 presentations, as well as any other resources that we've mentioned throughout the webinars. So we will have Basecamp available through May 31st, and we hope that you'll join us there.
Great, and this is Sarah. I just wanted to address one of the questions that has come into the question box, which I think you just alluded to, Victoria, that they can get a copy of the slides through Basecamp. You also will receive some information following the webinar on how you can access the previous webinars as well. So this recording, as well as our previous 2 webinars in this series, will be made available to you as well. So you can watch for a follow-up email with that information. If you do have questions, we're going to stay on the line just a little bit longer so that we can capture those questions. And we've got lots of comments to some of the conversation that was happening during the webinar as well. And so thank you for those. We're going to incorporate all of those into that Basecamp conversation. So please know that if we didn't get a chance to chat a response to one of your insights, know that we have it and that we'll be sure to find a way to include that. We also encourage you to reach out to us at learnmore@usa.childcareware.org if you do have questions. And the PowerPoint also includes a link to our CCR and our blog, which is a great resource as well. We do absolutely want to thank all of you for your attention. Thank you for your patience as we worked out some of our technical difficulties. We're so grateful for your time today. And again, we're going to go ahead and keep the webinar running for just a couple more minutes so that if you do have questions you want us to address, you have an opportunity to add those. So thank you so much for joining us this afternoon, and thank you to our presenters, Jess and Victoria. We're really grateful for your expertise and for all of the resources and information that you shared with us. And there's lots of comments in our chat box to just share that the information was really helpful. So thank you so much for everyone joining us today. We appreciate your time, and we look forward to our next opportunity to share with you again. Have a great afternoon.